Mérida. Thank you for being with us.
It's more formal than I expected, and at the same time, as relaxed as I would like for it to be. So hopefully, 30 minutes is a long time to talk about why the U.S. government supports English education. Actually, it's not enough time, really, but it's too much. It's much more than I can fill with it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, the parts that might be relevant to the broader topic. I'll tell you about the mission of the U.S. Embassy in Mexico and the team that forms part of that mission, including the 9 consulates that are around the country. And I think both of those things will inform a little bit of the discussion of why the U.S. government supports English language education in Mexico and around the world, and hopefully give you guys a sense. You already, I'm sure, have a sense of what you're doing and how important it is, but a little bit more of a sense of how important it is. But first, a few questions. How many of you are convinced that you're being personally enriched by this? I know it's obvious, but still for the exercise. So you're being personally enriched. Yeah, I know. Sorry. How many of you are convinced that you are giving something back, that what you're doing is contributing to the community that you are in? Some doubts, right? And I thought of that, right? As I was coming in the car, I was like, I'm going to ask that because I would have some doubts. And I say that because I remember being asked when I first arrived about English language education and sort of doesn't the U.S. government support it? I just arrived, and my first answer was kind of hesitant and tentative. And I think, let me just actually recognize the Yucatán crew and the Quintana Roo crew, who I did not meet recently. I had the pleasure of meeting Ashley, Rebecca, Gail, Megan, and Maeve. Sorry, it's a hard one. It's a hard one at my house, and I was really impressed with the richness of the experiences that you guys are having. So let me start by saying it's a great pleasure to be here. Sorry for the disjointed departure, but what I saw from you guys and how well you're getting to know the country and the insights that you're able to take away from your very real personal experiences and places that I haven't been yet really was impressive. And I say that to all of you. You're getting insight and experience that many of us that are in embassies or consulates won't have. And for me, it was really valuable to have that exchange with you. And I hope that this is equally beneficial for me, and that hopefully I can give you a little bit of a different perspective. Dr. Mike, I answered that question very badly because I was very hesitant. I was kind of worried about linguistic imperialism and teaching them English, and is that good? It's good. It's good. And especially it's good if you don't think of it as something that you're imposing on somebody else, but as an exchange, right? You guys are, the answer to the first question, you guys are taking as much away from your experience here as you are giving, and you're definitely giving something back, because everything that you're perceiving in terms of new culture, in terms of something different, in terms of sensitivities, in terms of awareness, in terms of the importance of protocol that we don't have to the same extent in the United States, in terms of long names like Benemerita and Musicuantos, those things are all little things that actually will help you have a broader perspective on what the world is like. And you're doing the same thing for a whole bunch of people in the schools, towns, cities that you're in some places more than others, but for whom you are true insight into the United States and the diversity that it represents and what it's like. So be convinced of the first, it's definitely having an impact on you, you feel that, but be convinced that you're also having a very positive impact on the societies that you're surrounded. That you're surrounded by, that you're influencing with this change. Sorry for that. So, a little bit about me. I was born in Spain. That's why I have the accent that I have. My father is Spanish, and I grew up in Valencia, Spain, until the age of 12. And then I moved to the United States, where my mother is from, to Indiana. And even though English was my mother's tongue, it was not really my mother tongue. I grew up speaking Spanish. That's why it doesn't go away. That's why that accent was as strong as it is. And so I had to learn English, not as a second language, because it had always been in my environment. But when I first moved to the States, I spoke with a very thick accent, and I remember some of my exposure was through English learning tapes, and hello, my name is Francis Matthews, and it was very, very interesting. But I say that because it's part of that having grown up in two monolingual situations created a bilinguality that has obviously helped me have a lot of perspective. And so that you guys are developing now. Some of you come from more natural bilingual backgrounds. Some of you may know other languages, and some of you are developing a bilinguality that will definitely help you gain perspective. And you're contributing to the same thing in those around you. Let me tell you a story about good English language education that just occurred to me a minute ago. My mother has told me this story a lot of times, but she left Indiana University at age 18, convinced that that was not the best place to learn Spanish. It's a great school. She loved Indiana University, but she was convinced that she would learn more if she went somewhere else. And so she convinced my grandfather to give her a ticket to Spain and some money to start. And with $200 and a one-way ticket, she began her life in Spain. Met my father. They decided to get married, and so she brought my dad back to meet my grandparents. And my grandparents wanted to do a big splash for their future son-in-law's arrival, so they went to the Spanish instructor at the school, and they asked, how do we make a sign? We want to put a banner across the street, welcoming Jesus to the United States. So they, how do we do this? So she wrote it down, and so they prepared the sign. And my dad arrived to Indiana, they turned the corner to my street, and across the street was this banner that said, De nada, Jesus. So, de nada, right? Not welcome, but you're welcome. So this is we tell the story in the family because, gosh, in the language, and it's really easy to have miscommunication. And this is the kind of thing that bad English language instruction can lead to, but then you guys are here to experience it that helps with that. It's a little bit from my personal history. It's always there. We laugh about it. But that was a well-meaning English language instructor, right? Who just didn't have the context, and the question wasn't asked the right way, and therefore that came out instead. My dad, I'm sure, wasn't grateful. But at the same time, I think they explained the confusion, and that he felt very well. Let me keep going a little bit more about me. So I was the son then of this sort of very split. My father very Spanish, my mother very American, although she became very Spanish over time. Moved to the United States when I was 12. Finished high school in Indiana. Went to Washington D.C. to GW. Joined the Foreign Service right after my master's program, which I also did at GW. And then have been around. I went to El Salvador first. Budapest was next, followed by Kiev, Barcelona, Tashkent, and then my last 3 years before coming to Midyear were in Washington, D.C., where I worked international adoption issues first, and then I spent a year at National Defense University. So that's a whole lot very fast about me. And now I'm in Mérida. My wife is from Mexico City originally, but of American Mexicans. So she's also a bicultural woman and that means that our kids are the third culture children of three culture kid parents. It's not very confusing. But it works. It works. So that's a little bit about me and the language and why that's important. Let's talk about the mission in Mexico and what the mission is trying to do. You guys may have gotten this. You guys had a briefing when you first arrived in Mexico City, and I'm sure that many people came and spoke to you. So this is a repeat. I apologize, but maybe it gives you a little bit more context. You guys know that the embassy is in Mexico City. Obviously, many of you have probably been there. We're working on goals in 5 different giant spheres. The first one is greater economic integration, greater competitiveness of the hemisphere. Trying to establish supply chains that are more fluid, shipping between the two countries that's more effective and efficient so that we can compete globally as a region and be an engine for global growth together. We're also doing a lot of work in Mexico on rule of law and security. Mexico has undertaken in the economic spheres reforms in education and energy that we think are very, very important, vitally important, but in the sphere of rule of law and security, a reform of the judicial sector that we think can be really, really important to the future of Mexico by establishing more transparent justice and faster justice, and that we think is very important to also create a more transparent environment where impunity and corruption are less obvious. People-to-people exchanges are very important. That's where you come in. You are part of those people-to-people exchanges. You're also part of a lot of other stuff, but people-to-people exchange. Few relationships are as complex and rich as the relationship between Mexico and the United States on people-to-people exchanges, right? We have this long border, which has this third culture right on the border itself, right? Which is neither fully of the United States or fully of Mexico, kind of enriched by both. But beyond that, then there are the exchanges that have, the business relationships, the academic relationships, the personal relationships that have developed over the years. Those people-to-people exchanges are supposed to help, and I believe do help with mutual understanding. We are two countries that, because of that shared border and a complex history, to be euphemistic, there's been a lot of mutual mistrust over the years, and that kind of flares depending on all kinds of different factors. Right? And so understanding each other is really important. And while those people-to-people contacts do help, they also create friction points that make us doubt intent. We are right now, I would tell you, in the period where the bilateral relationship government to government is probably as good as it's ever been, at least publicly. The Mexican government is very comfortable, I would say, being partners with us. And I think we also are very comfortable, much more comfortable being partners with them. And so things that in the past wouldn't happen, like joint communiques on different issues have happened. And the two foreign ministries are very much, I think, in sync in terms of trying to resolve issues together. So that is that climate of mutual understanding exists, and I think what we're trying to do is translate that further down, right? So that people in the United States understand Mexico better, so that Mexicans understand the United States better. And that understanding hopefully leads then to international support, where we are working together on broader global issues. And we have had that kind of support from Mexico. So those are sort of the 5 vectors of policy that the embassy is pursuing. Organizationally, I already said the embassy is in Mexico City. We have 9 consulates general. They're 5 on the border. They are in, you guys already know this? Okay, good, they're not good. So the 5 on the border are in Tijuana, Robles, Ciudad Juárez, Matamoros, and I skipped Nuevo Laredo. Mostly focused obviously on that culture of the border, the very vibrant exchange that we have. I think Nuevo Laredo, for example, has global records in terms of the number of shipping containers that cross that border. It's vitally important, every one of those 5 ports for that cross-border trade that makes the economic relationship so vibrant. Juárez is massive in large part because that's where all immigrant visas are processed for Mexicans going to the United States to immigrate. So no matter where you're from in Mexico, you go to Juárez to process your immigrant visa to move on to the United States. Besides those 5 border posts, then there is Hermosillo in Sonora and Monterrey in Nuevo León. They're for different historic reasons. Monterrey, obviously, a lot of the economic importance of that state and how vibrant that city is and how important it was to the development of the, what do they call it, an maquila, but export manufacturers. Then Guadalajara, because of the importance of that city. I was married in Guadalajara, so I heard some of you guys talk about Zapopan in different places in Sunday school. Brought back good memories. And then here we are in Mérida, in the southeast, right, for the Yucatán Peninsula. And that's my pivot to tell you more about this part of the country. So some of you already know it well, but the rest of you, let me tell you a little bit of the southeast. And if you are in this part of the country and I missed something, figure out. Feel free to help me out. So the consulate, the U.S. has had a diplomatic representation in the southeast, in Mérida specifically, since 1843. We've been here because of the commercial importance of this part of Mexico, specifically because of the commercial importance of one of this part of the country's largest crop, which at the time was iniquén, which led to the sisal fiber, with which shipping ropes were made, with which sacks were made. It was really important. It was a vitally important fiber to global commerce in the late 19th century. And so it brought a lot of wealth to Yucatán, and it made it a very important point for the U.S. So over the years, that consulate moved between Mérida and Progreso, but essentially it settled in Mérida, which, because of all the wealth that the green gold brought, became a sort of cultural hub in its own right, and had a lot of development. It was one of the wealthiest cities in the world back in the day. Wealthiest cities in the world, but very particular in the Mexican context, because it was not connected to Mexico. Physically, it was very difficult to get to Mexico City, so the cultural references for this part of Mexico have not historically been in the center. Yucatán, Mérida looked a lot to Havana, and through Havana onward to Europe. Yucatán also looked a lot across the Gulf to New Orleans, and through New Orleans to the rest of the United States and over to Europe. And so those were the 2 cultural points of connection for this part of Mexico. And you can tell, you can see there's a difference in the way they speak. There's a difference in the kind of food they eat. There's a difference in the way, if you go to Mérida, the city is laid out a little bit. And the Yucatecans are very proud of their identity and the difference that they have, as are the Campechanos. And then there's, between the Campechanos and the Yucatecans, this sort of tug of war of who's more what, right? Who is more authentically from here? They both claim the guayabera, they both claim most of the dishes that you will have over the next few days. Your Yucatan friends will tell you this is really Yucatecan. Or not. But I was at an event with the governor locally, and he was showing me this mural of all the local delicacies, and they were all Yucatecan. Campeche, yeah, delicacies. Anyway, to speak a little bit of how diverse Mexico is, and you guys are, hopefully, as you talk to one another, getting a feel for how different the different parts of Mexico that you are in are. This is a whole different part of the country. Just like the north is a different, I would say, part of the country, and then like the center is its own thing, and then the south, Chiapas and Oaxaca are yet another part of it. So that diversity within Mexico is one of the reasons that we have all of these different consulates. But in all of them, English language learning is really important to what we're doing. Because no matter what culturally they're like, they're trying to connect to the world economy. And they're trying to connect to the world economy largely through a increasingly important relationship with us that allows them to, as I mentioned, compete globally. And so what you're doing is really at the core of a lot of those priorities that we mentioned. So we talk about economy. I'll focus on Yucatán in particular. They are really keen on joining the modern economy of ideas and media. So they're doing a lot of targeted investment now in higher education, specifically in STEM. And so to be able to access that pool of knowledge that is globally available, you can do it in Spanish, certainly, but how much more can you have access to if you're doing it in English? So if you're doing research and you are bilingual, you obviously have a lot more perspective. You can do a lot more. Quintana Roo depends on tourism for its economy. They have no claims. I mean, they obviously want to diversify somewhat, but they are Mexico's leading earner of foreign revenue through tourism. And so to them, English language is essential for servicing tourism. 50% or over 50%, I guess slightly right at 50% of the tourists that Quintana Roo gets are still from the United States, especially Cancun. And so a lot of the municipalities there have entered agreements between the SEP and volunteer organizations to bring American volunteers to come in and help out with English at very early levels because of how important the local secretariats believe English education is. So their English is vital to their economy. And here in Campeche as well, you've heard the Secretary of Tourism wants tourism to be one of the next, I guess, elements in the diversification of Campeche's economy. Campeche's economy depends a lot on oil. Servicing the oil fields that are in the Gulf out of the port city of Puerto Rico. But that, given today's situation with oil, has been something that they've benefited and now they're suffering, right? That dependence is something they feel. And because of that, they want to diversify their economy. They're looking at agribusiness, they're looking at tourism, they're looking at manufacturing for export, but that all requires English language skills. And they know that because companies have told them that we could set up shop, but to train workers, they need to be able to speak English. So that's how critical that is. In rule of law and justice, it's also important. A lot of that transition that we were talking about to the new morality system requires exchange, requires judges here who've been working justice one way to go somewhere else and get a different experience of what the system can be like. And while they have examples in Spanish, Spain did that transition, Chile has done that transition, the closest experience with oral argumentation in courtrooms is in the United States. And so for judges that are in law school now, or attorneys who want to see that different perspective, being able to do that in English is really vitally important if they want to have the broadest possible access. I'm not convincing you that English language learning is really important and why the U.S. should support it. I know you guys already came to that with that, but I just wanted you to link it to every single thing that the embassy is doing because it really is that critical. And I realized that after a few months here, as I was looking at all the things that I was trying to accomplish locally, how important English language was. Academic exchange is a really big issue for me locally because we feel that Yucatán is a very safe, the peninsula as a whole, is a safe place to attract U.S. students to. A lot of other parts of Mexico that people might have historically wanted to go to, they are choosing not to go to now. Institutionally or just within families, parents are like, I'm not sending you to Mexico to see that's institutionally. Institutions, because of insurance reasons, will not allow exchange programs to other parts of Mexico. And so we're trying to facilitate Yucatán, promote itself as a place that is safer and therefore could be a good place for American students to come. And in that, part of that puzzle, the exchange needs to be both ways. And so we're looking for connections between universities here and there that would allow for flow in both directions. But one of the challenges that we have sending students from Mexico to the United States, well, there's two challenges. What do you guys think they are? Transportation is one of them because it's expensive to get from this part of Mexico to the United States compared to other parts of Mexico. Visas is a good one. Although, yeah, and that's one that you guys probably hear a lot about and that we have to answer a lot of questions about. But if you are accepted by a U.S. institution and you can convince us that you have those strong ties, you can probably get the visa. I say that after many years. I'm a consular code officer, so I've done visas most of my career.
Their families don't want to
Yeah, likewise, right? There's fear of, what is it going to be like for you, and what you're not going to be close. So that just like for American families, it can be a factor. The two other ones, one of them related to the subject of this talk.
Well, I mean, they don't know their English isn't up to par with
Yeah.
people in the U.S.
That's right.
And then also, I think related to that, even if they can speak English, they're like the past education system is very different than it is in the U.S. So
Yes.
it might be like at a disadvantage for ways of study, study
Absolutely.
skills and
So English language.
how to write essays.
So both of those are exactly right. English language level and related to English language level, but broader, just a whole different way of having understood school and education and what it should be like. So I put that one in that's one of the things that your role is so important, because you're helping with the English language level, and in some way you're contributing to broaden the perspective of what education should or could be like. And the other one is money. The other one is financing the education, right? Trying to find a way. Education in the U.S. is amazing, but it's also expensive, even in state schools compared to the costs that they pay here. And so where we're doing these bilateral agreements between institutions, you will find that they're supposed to be tuition neutral, but that doesn't work out when one place costs $40,000 a year and the other, even if they're very generous with themselves, can't get to $10,000 even. So it leads to exchanges that we have to, those are puzzles that we have to figure out and that institutions have to work out. But the one that you guys do have an impact on already is the English language, for sure. That's sort of where I am. And I think the rest of the time I prefer, and hopefully you guys would agree, if we just do more of a Q&A or just chat, and just tell me what you guys think. And you guys identify with those goals that I mentioned. Do they make sense to you? Does it help you feel connected to something broader, and just share your experiences? So, in the form of questions, so that I can keep talking about it.
You talked a lot about the economic needs of English language learning, but I guess in Yucatán in particular, I feel like I've struggled a lot with the cultural needs of the town, and there's a lot of migration to the U.S. and a lot of changing the way you protect my identity, and how you feel English impacts that.
Yeah. How do I feel English impacts that? On the way here, I was thinking about that, back to the question of sort of language. Imperialism and what are you doing? And I think that if it's truly phrased, if you truly feel it as an exchange, and you're taking something away, hopefully you can see that you are giving them more, and not taking away exclusively. I had a class when I was at the University of GW. It was Cultures of Native North America, and it was taught by someone who was Lakota. And she, the first day of class, said, yes, I am Lakota, and I'm not wearing, buckskins, and I'm not wearing a war bonnet, because cultures evolve. And in Yucatán, you guys certainly see the contrast between the Maya that is promoted internationally as the link to the archaeological sites. You see the poka game and the shells, but you also see the Maya of today, who are fully integrated, and depending on where they are, right? They're more or less integrated into the broader economy and into society. Certainly in Mérida you have Maya who are very well integrated, and then you have those that are more isolated parts of Yucatán, living this kind of in between world. And so what I would say in that sense is that teaching English there, and English language acquisition, gives them a tool, a key, to allow them to link up to the world more broadly. Not necessarily bypassing, but giving them an opportunity to work better with the established economy. And I think that can be really good. I don't think it only takes away. I think it allows them to progress like all cultures and all societies. I don't